The autumn rain had been falling steadily all morning when Margaret stepped off the bus on Fifth Avenue. At 62, she'd learned that life had a peculiar sense of timing. Her daughter Emma had insisted on setting up this lunch meeting, calling it a chance encounter with a friend's father. Margaret knew what it really was, a blind date, though Emma refused to use those words. "Just lunch, Mom, just conversation with someone kind," Emma had said with that hopeful look in her eyes. But this morning, everything had gone wrong. Margaret's basement apartment had flooded during the night. She'd spent hours moving boxes, salvaging what she could of her late husband's photographs. By the time she'd looked at the clock, she had 20 minutes to make it across town. There was no time to change from her water-stained beige dress, no time to fix her hair properly, or tend to the mud that had somehow found its way onto her clothes. She should have called to cancel. Any reasonable person would have. But something in her, perhaps the same stubborn hope that had carried her through 40 years of marriage through loss, through raising Emma alone, made her keep walking toward the restaurant. The Sterling Room was the kind of place Margaret rarely entered anymore. Warm wood paneling, soft lighting that made everyone look like they belonged in a gentler era, tables set with real linen. Through the tall windows, she could see well-dressed people engaged in quiet conversation. She looked down at her appearance, the dress with its brown stain across the front, her hastily pinned hair already coming loose, her old shoes still damp from the morning's disaster. The hostess's expression flickered with uncertainty as Margaret approached. "I'm meeting someone," Margaret said quietly. "Thomas Chen." "Of course. Right this way." As they wound through the restaurant, Margaret felt the weight of glances, the subtle shift in conversation as she passed. She'd experienced this before, in the years after David died, when grief had made her forget about appearances, when getting through each day was accomplishment enough. Then she saw him. Thomas was seated by the window, perhaps 65, with silver threading through his dark hair and an understated elegance in his navy blazer. He was the CEO of a textile company, Emma had mentioned. A widower like her, someone who understood loss. He looked up as she approached, and Margaret braced herself for the inevitable reaction, the polite mask that people wore when reality didn't match expectation. But Thomas's face softened into something else entirely. He stood, and his dark eyes held no judgment, only a gentle recognition of something deeper. "Margaret?" His voice was warm, tinged with an accent that spoke of another place, another beginning. "I apologize for my appearance," she said, the words tumbling out. "There was a flood this morning, and I should have called, but—" "Please," Thomas said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit down. Are you all right? You said there was a flood?" And just like that, the tension in Margaret's shoulders began to ease. She sat, and as Thomas listened, really listened, she found herself telling him about the morning, about the water seeping through the old foundation, about saving the photographs, about the boxes of David's things she still couldn't bear to fully unpack even after 5 years. "My wife Rachel loved photographs too," Thomas said softly. "After she passed, I spent months just sitting with her albums. My children thought I should put them away, move forward. But grief has its own timeline, doesn't it?" Margaret nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. "People mean well, but they don't understand. Moving forward doesn't mean leaving everything behind." They ordered lunch, though Margaret barely noticed what she chose. The conversation flowed like a gentle stream, meandering through memories and experiences. Thomas spoke of arriving in America at 25 with nothing but determination and his late father's watch. He'd worked in factories, learned the business from the ground up, eventually building something of his own. "But success is a peculiar thing," he said, his gaze drifting to the window. "It looks impressive from the outside, but it doesn't fill the quiet spaces. It doesn't make breakfast less lonely or give you someone to share the sunset with." Margaret understood completely. She told him about her years as a librarian, about finding solace in books when the world felt too heavy, about how she'd recently started volunteering at a community center, reading to children. "Their faces light up with such wonder," she said. "It reminds me that there's still magic in simple things. Still reasons to show up even on the hard days. Like today," Thomas said with a gentle smile. "You could have stayed home?" "Many people would have." "My daughter would have been disappointed," Margaret replied. And what about you? Would you have been disappointed? The question caught her off guard. She looked at this man across from her, this stranger who somehow felt familiar, and answered honestly. Yes, I think I would have been. As their lunch progressed, something remarkable happened. Margaret stopped noticing her stained dress. She stopped thinking about the other diners or the elegant surroundings. There was only this conversation, this unexpected connection with someone who understood that life's greatest moments often arrived unannounced, dressed in ordinary clothes. Thomas told her about his love of gardening, how he'd cultivated a rooftop garden at his building where he grew vegetables and flowers. My children think it's a strange hobby for someone in textiles, but there's something honest about dirt under your fingernails, something real about watching things grow. Margaret smiled. I used to have a small garden before I moved to the apartment. I miss it terribly. The tomatoes that never quite ripened properly, the herbs that somehow always flourished. You should see mine, Thomas said, then hesitated. That is, if you'd like to. Not today, of course, but perhaps another time. The vulnerability in his voice touched something in Margaret's heart. Here was a successful man, someone who commanded boardrooms and made important decisions, asking with the nervousness of a young boy whether she might want to see his garden. I'd like that very much, she said. As they finished their coffee, Thomas reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Margaret, I want you to know something. When you walked in today, do you know what I saw? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I saw someone brave, someone who kept a promise despite a difficult morning, someone whose kindness shows in her eyes and whose strength shows in still being here, still showing up, even when life throws water and mud in the way. He paused. I saw someone worth knowing, someone I'd very much like to see again. Margaret felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were the tears that come when someone truly sees you. Not the clothes you wear or the circumstances you're weathering, but the person underneath. I'd like that too, she whispered. They left the restaurant together, stepping out into the afternoon. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight was breaking through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into something almost beautiful. Let me drive you home, Thomas offered. I'd like to make sure your apartment is all right. As they drove through the city, Margaret realized that Emma had been right. Not about setting her up on a date, but about the possibility that life still held surprises, that somewhere between grief and acceptance, between yesterday and tomorrow, there were moments of grace waiting to unfold. Thomas walked her to her door, helped her assess the water damage, and even called a restoration company he knew, speaking in that quiet, competent way that made problems seem manageable. Before he left, he turned to her. Next Saturday? For the garden? Next Saturday, Margaret agreed. As she watched him drive away, she looked down at her ruined dress and smiled. Sometimes, she thought, showing up exactly as you are, messy, imperfect, real, is the bravest and most beautiful thing you can do. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's when life gives you exactly what you needed, even if you didn't know you were looking for it. The dress went into the trash that evening, but Margaret kept the memory of Thomas's kind eyes, his gentle acceptance, his understanding heart. And she began to believe, in that quiet way that comes with age and wisdom, that perhaps the best chapters were still waiting to be written. After all, love, real love, had never been about appearances. It had always been about seeing and being seen, about showing up even when it's hard, about finding someone whose heart recognized yours, water stains and all.